Hi, this is Sujita. Welcome to the Focusnet JRF English Literature channel. So, I thought of starting with the literary theory series too. So, the first one will be structuralism. So, what is structure? It is an arrangement or an order. Okay. So, example, human body. So, human body, it has an universal structure, right? So, it is universally accepted. The body, the arrangement of the human body is actually universally accepted. So each and everything in the universe has structure. Okay. So if we take a solar system, it also has a structure, right? So just like everything, text also has structure. So what is structure in literature? The idea of structure for the very first time is given by Aristotle in his theory of tragedy, that is poetics. So idea of structure, it has been existed in the ancient times in itself. Okay, so every movement has an ideology behind it. Every movement. Okay, so structuralism, it started in France around 1920 by Ferdinand de Saussure. So, to understand the movement, we should divide the history into two phases, that is pre 1920 belief and post 1920 belief. What is pre 1920 belief? People used to look into a literary text as a piece of work. That's all, a work. What does mean by work? A work is something like physical object. It is a physical object or a book written by someone. Example, Hamlet by Shakespeare. It's just a book, a work written by someone. Okay, so the interpretation is close ended here. Why? We will observe the cultural, biographical background. We will observe social aspects. Okay, then we get the meaning of a work. So it is close ended. We understand the work by its cultural background, by its biographical background, by its social aspects, then we understand the meaning. So this kind of interpretation is close-ended. What is post 1920 belief? People now started to consider a literary piece or a text as a text. What is text? Text is a linguistic construct and is open to interpretation. It is open to interpretation. Hermeneutic of interpretation. It means various that one can get out by analyzing a linguistic construct, that is a text. You can analyze by the means of linguistic of a text and you can get various interpretation. That is what hermeneutic of interpretation. By understanding the language, one can know a lot about the text. So it is open-ended. If you know the language, then you can understand what it is written in a book. You don't need to understand the biographic. You don't need to go for what is that? Cultural. You don't need to know the social aspects of the book. If you know the language, then you can understand the text. So he says one can understand the text better by using structuralism. Okay, because structuralism says that a linguistic construct, if you know a text is a linguistic construct, so if you know the language, then you can understand the text. So language is the main base of the text. Okay, so language is the main base of the text, and by understanding the language you can interpret the meaning of the text, which means author has no control over the text that he has written. We can interpret in any way we want, because if we know the language, then we can interpret in any ways. We don't need to wonder what is the intention of the author. Now author has no control over his text. Okay, let's see about Ferdinand de Saussure. He is the father of modern linguistics, a great scholar of Sanskrit too, and he even did PhD in Sanskrit, and he is able to understand what is language, and he even gave principles of structuralism. What are the principles of structuralism? We'll see it one by one. Concept of episteme. What is episteme? Episteme means a unit of knowledge, is construct of language. So language, it means in order to gain knowledge, okay, in order to gain knowledge, you need to know the language first, right? In order to gain knowledge, you need to know the language first. So one cannot gain language if he or she is not having a basic understanding of language, right? So in other words, Saussure says that linguistic determines a meaning. So language determines the thought. That is what he is trying to tell. So one can think nothing without the use of language. So if we know the language, we can understand. We can even think about something only if we know the language. So if you see a child, okay, a child, it learns a new things. How does it learn? By learning the language, right? So a child, he is understanding the concept of father with the word father. He understands the word. He is learning the word father. Only then he can understand the concept of father. So language, it determines the thought. The second principle is language follows a structure. A language follows a structure. So language follows a specific structure, and if that specific structure is disturbed, then it would not carry the same meaning as it is supposed to be. Example, dogs barks birds at. Does it give any sense to you? Because it does not follow any ideal structure of language. Now look at the next example. Dogs barks at bird. Does it make sense now? Why? Because it follows an ideal structure. So language, it follows a structure. So Ferdinand de Saussure, he never wrote a book. Okay, so I'm telling you that there are so many principles that he has given, but he doesn't. He is not. He has not. What is that? Written any book. Whatever his thought was, he did not write any book about his thoughts, about language, about linguistics, about anything. But he had delivered so many lectures on structuralism. His students who collected his notes from his lectures, they made a book, and that book is called as Course in General Linguistics. That is how we come to know about Ferdinand de Saussure and his idea on structuralism. And there are also other writers, many other writers who made contribution to structuralism, namely Roland Barthes. You have Death of the Author. He is a French literary critic. Then you have Vladimir Prop, his Morphology of the Folktale. Okay, let's see the next principle. Sine. What is sine? Any unit of language. Any unit of language is known as sine. So according to Saussure, this sign is divided into two types, signifier and signified. What is signifier? It's just a word. It's just a word. Tree. Okay, so tree is a word. Tree. So this is a signifier. What is signified? The mental concept you get when you see the word tree. You get the image of the tree, right? It can be any kind of tree. But the signifier, it remains the same. Tree, whether it's short or long or big or, okay, It is a tree, but signified means the mental concept you have, the image of the tree you have. I can think about one kind of tree and you can think about one kind of tree. But the signifier is the word tree, but signified is the mental concept you have, the image of the tree. Okay, so any word we encounter has two parts, signifier as well as the signified, and there is also a relation between both of them. If you see the example, dog, if I say dog to you, you may think about German Shepherd dog, and the other one will think about bulldog. Okay, here dog is signifier, but the image that you get when I spell the word dog is the signified. So which means there is no fixed meaning attached to a word. The signified, it is not fixed. It differs. Okay. So according to Saussure, signifier is the most important thing because it does not change. The signifier, it does not change. But the signified, you see, it changes according to the people. I can give you another example, that is awful. Awful, it is a signifier. It's a word awful, it's a signifier. So today world, what does mean by awful? Ugly, valueless, unimportant things, dreadful. That is what mean by awful now. But earlier you see, awful means beautiful, respectable, commendable. Okay. So the signified, it changes according to the time, according to the people, according to the culture. Even according to the culture, the signified change. But the signifier, it remains the same. Signifier means it's a word, it remains the same. But the meaning, that is the signified, that differs. So signifier remains the same, but the signified, through the time, it is changing. Through the culture, it is changing. What is the arbitrary relationship between signifier and the signified? This means the signified, I mean, the concept, mental concept you have, it is culturally constructed. Signifier remains the same, but the signified, you see, it is culturally constructed. Example, chamcha. So a person from Pakistan who is belonging to the 20th century, he can identify the meaning of the word as buttering or flattering. But you see the Western culture, a man from Western culture, he can understand the word as spoon. See, it is culturally constructed, a same word, but differs in meaning. And I can also give you another meaning, another word, that is God. The word God might have different mental concept for people of different cultures. If I say God to an Islamian, he will think about Allah. If I tell the word God to a Hindu, he will think about a Hindu God, a Shiva. If I tell a God to Christian people, they will think about Jesus. Okay, so same word, it can have different meanings from culture to culture. Understood? So what's the next principle? Binary relationship between words. What are the binary relationship? Words are binary. We are understanding a word by looking at the opposites, by looking at its opposites. See, for example, if I tell a word darkness, how do you define darkness? You will define darkness is something or somewhere where there is no light, right? So the word darkness is defined by the opposite of it, that is light. And there is another example, dog. A dog is a dog. We define a dog by contrasting it with other animals. It is not cats, but it is a dog. We are contrasting it with someone. So that is what the binary relationship between the words. So I may continue this with Ferdinand de Saussure. I hope you understand what I have taught you, the concept that I have taught you today. If you have any doubts, please comment me. Thank you.